Have you ever walked into a room and just felt that something was off? Nobody said anything. Nothing obvious happened. But somehow you noticed the forced smile, the awkward silence, the tension that everyone else seemed to miss. If that sounds familiar, there's a chance you're not actually overthinking. You might be experiencing something psychologists call hyper-vigilant empathy, and it could be affecting your life in ways you don't even realize. Most people think empathy is a gift, and honestly, sometimes it is. Being able to understand how other people feel can help you build stronger relationships, avoid conflict, and connect with people on a deeper level. But what happens when that empathy becomes so sharp that you're constantly scanning the room for emotional danger? What happens when you can feel tension before anyone says a word, pick up on mood changes almost instantly, or find yourself carrying emotions that were never yours to begin with? In this video, we're going to look at the psychology behind people who seem to notice everything, why they're like that, where it comes from, and why the very thing that makes them so understanding can also leave them completely drained. Because here's the part most people get wrong. The issue isn't that you're too sensitive. The issue might be that your brain learned to become an emotional radar, and once you understand why that happened, a lot of things start to make sense. You probably know someone like this, or maybe this is you. The friend who notices when someone's mood changes before anybody else does. The coworker who can sense tension in the office before a disagreement even starts. The partner who knows something's wrong long before the other person admits it. And people like this tend to hear the same things over and over. You're imagining it. You're overthinking. You're too sensitive. But then something interesting happens. A few days pass, maybe a week, and suddenly everyone realizes there really was a problem. The tension was real. The conflict was real. The feeling they picked up on was real. And it happens again, and again, and again. So here's a question. How many times have you had a feeling that something wasn't right, only to find out later that you were completely correct? Keep that in the back of your mind, because the answer might reveal more about how your brain works than you think. A lot of people assume hypervigilant empathy is some kind of natural talent. But for many people, it didn't start as a gift. It started as survival. Imagine a child growing up in an environment where emotions were unpredictable. Maybe the adults around them could be warm one minute and angry the next. Maybe affection came and went without warning. Maybe arguments could start at any moment. When you're in that kind of environment, your brain adapts. The child learns something important. Pay attention. Watch carefully. Notice everything. Because noticing the smallest change in someone's mood might help you avoid getting hurt. Over time, the brain becomes incredibly good at reading emotional signals. A raised eyebrow, a different tone of voice, a sigh, a pause that lasts half a second longer than normal. Little details that most people barely register. Eventually, the brain starts treating emotional information the same way a security guard watches tunnels cameras. Always scanning, always checking, always preparing. And years later, that habit can still be there, even when the danger isn't. And this is where things get complicated, because noticing more doesn't always make life easier. Sometimes it makes life a lot harder. A hypervigilant person can walk into a completely normal conversation and immediately start analyzing everything. Why did they say it like that? Why did their expression change? Why did they look away? Were they annoyed? Disappointed? Frustrated? The brain starts collecting clues. The problem is that not every clue means something, and not every emotional signal is a warning sign. Sometimes people are just tired, or distracted, or hungry, or thinking about something that has absolutely nothing to do with you. But a hypervigilant brain doesn't like uncertainty. It wants answers, right now. And constantly searching for those answers can be exhausting. Because when you're monitoring everyone else's emotions all day long, you never really get a chance to relax. Let's do a quick check. Have you ever felt responsible for fixing someone else's mood? Have you apologized when you didn't actually do anything wrong? Do you feel drained after being around people for too long? Do you notice tension before everyone else does? Do you replay conversations in your head for hours afterward? If you're nodding along to several of those, there's a good chance you're dealing with some level of hyper-vigilant empathy. But here's what's interesting. There's another piece to this that most people never talk about. A lot of people treat empathy and hyper-vigilance as if they're the same thing. They're not. Empathy is understanding how someone feels. Hyper-vigilance is constantly searching for how someone feels. That's a huge difference. Empathy says, I understand what you're going through. Hyper-vigilance says, I need to monitor everyone's emotional state at all times. One creates connection, the other creates pressure. And when those two things get mixed together, people often start believing they're responsible for everybody else's emotions. The truth is, that's an impossible job. But millions of people try to do it every day. Because hypervigilant people notice discomfort so quickly, they often end up becoming people pleasers. Not because they're weak, and not because they're fake. It's because they can see emotional consequences before they happen. They can see disappointment coming. They can see rejection coming. They can see conflict coming. So they adjust. They hold back opinions. They avoid difficult conversations. They take responsibility for problems that don't belong to them. And over time, something strange starts to happen. They become incredibly good at understanding everyone else, but they slowly lose touch with themselves. And that's where the real danger begins. By the way, if you're interested in psychology, human behavior, and the hidden patterns that shape the way we think and act, make sure you're subscribed. A lot of what drives human behavior happens beneath the surface, and that's exactly the kind of thing we explore here. Now let's talk about the part that people rarely mention. Imagine carrying an emotional microphone with you everywhere you go. You hear everything. Every frustration, every disappointment, every insecurity. At first that might sound useful, but eventually it becomes overwhelming. A lot of hypervigilant people describe feeling emotionally overloaded, not necessarily because their own lives are difficult, but because they're constantly absorbing pieces of everyone else's. And the human mind simply wasn't designed to carry that much emotional weight. At some point, the person who understands everyone else needs someone to understand them. But many never ask for help. They're used to being the observer, not the observed. The listener, not the speaker. The helper, not the person being helped. And that's where we find the real paradox. The people who understand others the best often feel the most misunderstood. Just sit with that idea for a second, because there's a good chance you've experienced it yourself. So what can you actually do if you recognize yourself in all of this? First, learn to separate observation from responsibility. Just because you notice someone's emotions doesn't mean you're responsible for fixing them. Those are two completely different things. Second, question your assumptions. Not every strange look is criticism. Not every silence is anger. Not every mood shift is about you. And third, give yourself permission to stop scanning. That sounds simple, but if you've spent years monitoring people's emotions, it can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. Because calm feels unfamiliar, and sometimes unfamiliar feels unsafe. But that's often where healing starts, not by becoming less empathetic, but by learning when it's okay to turn the radar off. A psychologist once talked about a client who spent years trying to predict everyone's emotions. She could sense tension before it appeared, read people with incredible accuracy, notice details that everyone else missed. For most of her life, she believed that ability came with a responsibility. If she saw the emotion, she had to manage it. If she noticed the problem, she had to fix it. Then one day she realized something. She could notice emotions without carrying them. She could understand people without managing them. She could care deeply, without sacrificing herself. And that realization changed everything. If you've spent your life noticing everything, the tension in a room, the emotions nobody talks about, the subtle shifts that other people seem to miss, you're not broken, and you're not imagining things. Your brain learned to pay attention for a reason. The goal isn't to notice less. The goal is to stop carrying everything you notice. Because empathy really is a gift, but only when it comes with boundaries. And maybe the most important thing a hypervigilant person can learn is this. Understanding someone else's emotions should never come at the cost of your own peace. Because you can care about people. You can understand people. You can even help people without carrying the weight of their emotions on your shoulders. And sometimes, that's the difference between empathy that heals and empathy that hurts. If you're into psychology and human behavior, subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.